Dude, Graham, thanks for coming to hang out with me, man. This is big.
Dude, thank you for having me. Stoked to be
I
here.
uh, I want to lead this conversation off by asking why you hate sleeping on the ground. What do you have against sleeping on the earth
Just
where you were born, where you came from?
a lot of PTSD.
What do you mean? What happened to you, man? Who
No,
touched you on the ground? What happened?
yeah, well, we won't get into that on this show. We can talk about it after.
Hey,
But
this is rated mystery,
yeah,
rated
exactly.
M.
So I think the big thing is learning the places that you can sleep when you're not on the ground. That has really encouraged us to make our tents in the rooftop space.
Yeah. Yeah. I just look at I look at my tent. I've got a bunch of fairly decent, North Face tents or whatever. They're old, so they're
Mhm.
still pretty good. They're a bunch of old North Face stuff. And I go, wow, like it's fine for me as long as I have a pad to sleep on. I'm generally okay. Like, what is it that made you want to not sleep on the ground anymore? Was there like an instance? Did you get like
Yeah,
attacked
I
by a
mean,
badger, or how did
there's a
this?
lot of means of conveyance that are great for sleeping on the ground. So like if I'm on a bicycle and going bike packing, I'm going to sleep on the ground. Motorcycle
Yeah.
travel, sleep on the ground.
Hey,
But
bike top tent, man.
yeah,
Bike
not
top
real,
tent.
not realistic yet. But with enough little like prop rods and overland
Yeah,
accessories, you
carbon
can probably pull it
fiber.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I
But
gotta have AI make a bike top tent. I think
yeah,
that would
I
be.
think that'd be reasonable. But I'm surprised it doesn't exist yet. If it doesn't, it probably does.
Yeah.
But the big driver for creating a rooftop tent is, and the reason that we love making the campers that we make is all the times that you use it when you're not actually sleeping in it. So
Yeah.
everything from like setting it up with the kids at the beach to going to the doctor's office during COVID when you couldn't go into the like waiting room area and you have a place to hang out with kids, like setting up, taking a nap on the side of the road, like alternative to a hotel room. Like when's the last time you set up a tent at a truck stop? And I camp at truck stops on the side of the road when I'm traveling across the country because I don't want to spend 120 bucks at a
Yeah.
Holiday Inn,
I end up
for
just
like
sleeping in my
6 hours.
car.
Oh, dude,
Which
it
is
sucks. It
sucks
sucks,
bad, man. It
dude.
sucks. It's
Like
so bad.
you tilt that front seat all the way back, and then like every 3 hours you turn on the car long enough to get the heater running, but then you
Yeah.
fall asleep while the car's running. You're like, is it really good for my car to idle it for 3 hours?
Probably not. Is there a
No.
leak somewhere? Probably not.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, I always feel like if I'm lean back and I'm like this, I always feel like if someone were to like smash my window, I'm in a really bad defensive position. You know
Yeah,
what I
you're in
mean?
a
You just
vulnerable
like you're
place.
just laying there, laying in the back of the car, asleep. The seatbelt's like just yeah, it's
Yeah,
not good. At
you're
least you're
not prepared.
what 6 feet up in the air.
Yeah,
You got a
exactly.
tent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
What could go
you
wrong?
got the height advantage. A lot more
Yeah. What could go wrong?
visibility, easier to shoot down, no targets behind you.
Yeah. So you have a manufacturing background, right? Is that kind of
Yeah.
what
So
I
my,
what I
my
understand?
yeah, my personal formal background is in mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And I grew up fabricating, grew up around my dad having a fabrication shop. Used to build all sorts of everything from like snowplow accessories to like Porsche octisserie restoration tools, kind of all sorts of random stuff. And
Okay.
then growing up in Montana, where the cost of living has always been kind of high relative to the income level, entrepreneurship was really the only path if I wanted to stay in the valley that I lived in because there just weren't the jobs to support the cost of living.
Why is that? What's going on there?
It's always been kind of an up and coming place. It's Bozeman, Montana. It's kind of like the Boulder of the Northern Rockies, and being able to work. There's been a lot of people that wanted to work there for a long time and wanted to live there. So there's a really big talent pool of overqualified people. So if you have a mechanical engineering degree, you're one of 1,000 people applying to become a bartender.
Wow. Okay. Because there's no
Historically,
mechanical engineering jobs, basally, because there's no manufacturing, nothing.
I mean,
What are people doing? How are people surviving?
so
How
up
many
here,
bartenders can you have?
yeah, quite a few if it's a tourism town because we're
Yeah.
like the hub for Yellowstone, the kind of the
Okay.
gateway to get up here. And so the majority of the Bozeman economy, although it has had a pretty decent
You've
tech
seen me
industry,
wipe my face off every once in a while. It's 90 degrees in my garage. So if
oh, perfect.
that's yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of the upsides of Montana. It's not typically like that.
If you are looking for the best app for navigating your next adventure, look no further than OnX Off-Road. With over 750,000 miles of trails and comprehensive offline maps,
You can explore without worrying about cell service. The app features trail ratings, detailed information, and a Discover tool to help you find trails near you. OnX Off-Road also includes public and private land boundaries, so you'll always know where you can legally off-road, and camp. Plan trips with ease using our route builder and share your adventures with friends. With features like route tracking, waypoint marking, and real-time updates, you're equipped for any challenge. Ready to start your next adventure with confidence? Try OnX Off-Road free for 7 days. Download today and start exploring. Petrol Box is a monthly service made specifically for the automotive enthusiast. Each month, they carefully select items including tools, detailing supplies, apparel, garage gear, stickers, and publications to be sent right to your doorstep. It's a curated selection of the latest and greatest gear in the industry. There are actually 2 different levels of subscription to choose from. The Petrol Box Basic costs less than $20 a month, while the Petrol Box Premium gets you more gear for $39.95 a month. Check them out at mypetrolbox.com and be sure to use the code OVERCREST at checkout to get $6 off your first month.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah, but there's always been like some industries in Bozeman, but tourism's always been a huge part of that. And we have like a local ski hill. It's a college town, so the college is one of the biggest employers. Typical like college hospital kind of a deal. Yep. And yeah, for mechanical engineering people that want to build stuff, there's historically not a lot of outlets if you don't want to just only design things to get made in Asia as a mechanical engineer.
Yeah. So what was one of the most memorable adventures that you've been on? Was it before or after you started the company? Before.
Having less money lends itself to better adventures, probably. So I think one of the biggest adventures that I had was actually replicating a Top Gear tour and buying scooters in Hanoi, riding up to the Chinese border and then down to Ho Chi Minh City. And then only finding out afterward that the Top Gear guys had like a full follow vehicle behind them to keep traffic from destroying them. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like Bear Grylls was never alone. The only guy that I know that's ever been alone, at least back when you're talking, was Les Stroud.
Yeah.
That dude was alone.
Legit. Totally legit. So we did the alone version of the Vietnam motorcycle tour. And I think it was like $3,000 for a month, including airfare and purchasing a motorcycle.
What did you buy?
Honda Dream 50 clone. So it was like a Chinese version of like a Honda mini bike that was capable of doing like 30 miles an hour. And it was already clapped when we bought it. So the thing was pretty roached out, pinned wide open at 30 miles an hour. And just, we'd break down pretty regularly, but there's so much infrastructure over there to fix bikes. It was really easy just to like pull off the side of the road, completely unprepared and figure it out. And that's a huge part of how we want to approach adventures is I think you have a similar goal where it's like the less prepared you have to be, the better. It's like we're getting out there to get in over our head.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there ever a moment when you pushed yourself too far then, in that vein?
I mean, not in probably, I don't think there's been a moment where I've pushed myself too far in like an adventure setting, apart from like maybe some near misses backcountry skiing in high school. But in terms of business, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about business and risk?
Yeah.
I think your comfort level as the owner and what you're responsible for.
Yeah. I mean, I think any entrepreneur kind of has to put themselves out there in order to take on hard problems. And because one of the big problems that we want to solve is domestically manufacturing goods, the inherent challenge of swimming upstream there is pretty risky. The infrastructure that we need to build stuff here doesn't exist, so we have to build it. And being able to say, hey, customer, we're going to build this product without having access to just deep buckets of capital to like take the time to build that and having to build that kind of under a microscope in front of customers is, a pretty gnarly project.
Yeah. So I do want to rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
I got to get a story from this moped trip.
Yes.
What were some things that went good and what were some things that went wrong? I imagine there are some things that had to have gone wrong if you're riding around on a Chinese scooter. Yeah. And you're just like some foreigner guy driving across Hanoi.
Yeah. So
tell me more.
I mean, in Vietnam, you kind of get a hall pass, at least at the time. This was like 2011, maybe, for being a white guy. But we wore full face helmets because we didn't want to get killed.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't tell. So
Yeah.
we went up to the Chinese border, this town called Lao Kai, and basically rode back down on the train. And because I think one of us was too hungover to actually make the ride, so we took the sleeper train instead, and got out. And to put your motorcycle on the train, they drain all the fuel out of your bike. So we go buy gas from somebody on the corner selling like liter cola bottles full of gasoline, as you do, and poured it in, get on the bike, and we're just nuking across traffic, just passing everybody because it's like we're racing, right? And it's nighttime, probably 1 a.m. And all of a sudden there's like a little scooter that pulls up beside us with a dude on the back. So 2 dudes on the bike. Dude on the back has an AK-47 slung over his shoulder, and then the dude up front has like some sort of pistol on his hip. You can't really tell because we're riding, and get pulled over by 2 cops, pull our helmets off and just start speaking Spanish. And it's just like, they're like, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. But
the guys with the AKs were cops?
Yeah, they were cops. Yeah. So like there's really strict speeding laws in Vietnam if you're actually from Vietnam. But if they don't, at the time, they didn't really want to enforce that kind of stuff against white guys as tourists, because they're trying to promote the tourism economy, I guess. So that was
it sounds like a diplomatic pass, man.
Yeah, exactly.
What other crimes did you commit?
Trying to think of
Tell me
anything
later.
Yeah, the other really sporty thing about that trip in general was that my buddy that came with me, Jed, had like never really ridden a motorcycle before. And learning in Southeast Asian traffic is one of the most challenging environments to like understand like the flow state involved in riding in like heavy Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi traffic. And he got in at least 2 pretty significant accidents with other people, like hitting other bikes. I think at one point he like had some sort of head-on collision with like 2 guys in suits on a scooter. And I wasn't there at the time because I was pretty far ahead.
Those guys were on their way to make the deal, man. And the dude screwed everything up. Those guys were going to make the deal.
Exactly. And the 3-piece got torn, the button ripped off.
Oh no.
So yeah, I mean, there were just a bunch of little things like that, but it was, I mean, overall it was just completely underprepared. But like, you go somewhere like that where people live every day, you know, everything you need to survive is there. So even though you don't have a map, even though you don't know what you're getting into, like, it's going to be fine. So I think that was kind of the attitude we had the whole time, and I guess it worked.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I think we have to be careful and say it's not worth having an adventure if there's not risk. But I think the best adventures do come with some modicum of risk.
Mean, how is it an adventure? But how is it an adventure if there's not risk? You like, otherwise you're going on a cruise. And I guess you could catch like some sort of new disease. Like, but I don't think that's the thrill of going on a cruise.
Yeah, I guess it's the level of like, how much adventure do you want? I mean, that chart must, adventure and risk, the lines are very close as they go up. The better adventure, more risk, for sure. I think people need to take baby steps though. You know, I don't think we should be sending people over. I would go over to place and go scootering around. I don't think I'd have a problem with that. I want to go down to Tierra del Fuego, man.
Yeah.
I want to I'd like to take, it just seems like a really bad idea right now. And I've talked to a few people and they're like, yeah, maybe not now. Maybe it's just not a good plan.
I think it depends on your car. I mean, how much of the risk do you think is a function of what you showed up in?
And your attitude and how you carry yourself too.
Yeah. But also like, if you show up in like your totally farkled out, super modified Tacoma with like the Brodozer lights and your lift kit and your big tent and like max tracks, like,
you're an asshole.
You're kind of an asshole. So like,
you're an asshole here half the time.
Totally. But you do that like in Honduras and you're like extra, you know?
Yeah.
So it's,
I heard, who was I talking to? Someone said they basically think that you're the guy, you're the cops at that point. You're being paid by the cops, or you're the guy that's paying the cops,
or
you're some government guy or something like that, or some contractor that's in it.
Yeah. Or you have the vehicle that the cops competition wants.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You might get some unwelcomed attention.
So where was this inception of Go Fast Campers? Like, how did you
Yeah.
come up with this idea, and how did this come to be?
So Go Fast Campers stemmed from a history of adventure travel. So I'd done a lot of like bike packing trips and a bunch of motorcycle travel, and wanting to be able to get out, but adding the component of like bringing my wife with me because I'd gotten married recently at the time when we were first getting out, and she doesn't want to ride two up on a motorcycle, and also like the future prospects of like having a family. And I grew up
Do people
around.
ride two up like for thousands
Dude,
of miles? Do people
Europeans
do
do it around the world. It's gnarly.
that? Oh
And
man,
it's like always some like Swiss guy or a French dude and his wife, like in like Tunisia or
buy her a
Afghanistan.
bike, man. Come on, dude. Buy her a bike. What are you doing?
Dude, if your wife
What a
is down to
horrible
ride
idea.
on the back seat, though, that's kind of tight.
I don't know. At some point, I feel like there'd be a fight.
Oh, for
There'd
sure.
be a fight, and then you
So-
can't go anywhere, and you're
and
stuck,
well-
and she's
What happens if she's
digging
just
her chin into you.
fuming behind you and you're like trying to cross this like mountain pass in Pakistan and you're just furious at each other? Like, what's that day like?
No, not
Like,
good. It's not a
this
good
is-
day.
This is
Not
the
a-
pinnacle of your trip. You're at that big salt flat outside of Ushuaia or whatever everywhere goes to.
Yep.
And like, she's just furious and you're still on the same bike together the whole time, 2 feet apart.
Not good. Can you imagine Long Way Up, but they were Ethan and the other guy were on the same bike? It's not good. It's not as good of a show.
So I think the real
Gotta have-
question
you gotta have your
is
own
that more of an adventure though? I think it would be.
Oh, well, those dudes they relived the Dumb and Dumber thing. Did you see that?
No.
Those guys, you know the scene in Dumb and Dumber where they buy the scooter
Yep.
and then they drive across and they piss their pants to stay warm and they got the snot all over their face. These guys decided to go to Aspen. So they rebuilt the scooter,
No way.
and these two dudes hopped on it. You can look up the article. And they drove it, and they went through like 10 sets of tires, and I guess it was just pure misery.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
it
it was
would have to be.
absolute pure misery driving all the way to Aspen on basically a lawn tractor engine.
So there's a
on little
guy,
metal scooter frame.
dude. There's a guy on YouTube,
But
right?
The
Na-
stories though.
Oh, so there's a guy on YouTube that's like the pinnacle of this, named Ed March, and he has a channel called C90 Adventures, and he's like my aspirational hero of what adventure travel can be. And his whole shtick initially was on online forums, riding like little Honda Trail 90s, like fully around the world. And then his most recent escapades are buying like a tractor supply mini Jeep, repowering it with an ATV motor, and riding it like across the state of Utah. And he has full vlog series, like hour-long episodes of him like trying to ride it from like Moab to Area 51. On like
Why is he doing it? What is he like? Is it the shock factor? Is that what he's doing on his channel? Is it kind of like people are like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
I think
Is it a
he
shock
just
factor thing?
I think part of it is like every story has kind of like a fundamental narrative of like what you're trying to accomplish. So you have like man versus nature, man versus machine. And in order to have an adventure, you need those elements of risk and you need that element of story. And to just plot yourself against the machine. And I mean, it's kind of like your travel with the Porsche. It's like you are going to have a component of man versus machine. If you're doing this in a 4th gen 4Runner, no one would care. But like the fact that you're doing it in this mode of conveyance that guarantees suffering, but then doing that with an incredible high level of competency, it's fun to watch. If he was just going to do it and just like sucked at it and it just broke all the time and it was miserable, it wouldn't be that fun to watch. But this guy is like a full engineer, and he's converted his little Jeep thing to become fully remote control. So when he went over the snowy mountain pass, he could get out of it to unweight the vehicle enough to drive it over these snowy passes, RC walking behind it. So
Yeah, I think you have to go to war at some point a little bit.
yeah,
Right? I mean,
totally.
like old 911s are pretty sketchy to drive,
Mhm.
especially as they get into the higher horsepower. And I always feel like I'm going to war with that car today.
Every man
Me
needs
and
to
that
go to
car
war.
are gonna fuck around. So I think there's a little bit of, and I'm it's funny, but I'm also serious about it a little bit, right?
Mhm.
There's got to be some battle involved.
Yes.
There's got to be a little bit of battle, a little bit of sacrifice, and stuff's got to break. Some of the best stories that we hear at the end of the Overcrest rally are the people that come running up to me, like, "Yeah, man, like this dude that had his car kept shutting off. It was an old a 320i that had been converted to have like an M50, which is a inline
Yep.
BMW 6 modern engine in it. And it kept dying over and over again. And he couldn't figure out why it kept dying. And it would run. He'd let it cool off and it would run for a little bit. Couldn't figure it out. And then, you know, a lot of cars, if the crank sensor is not working, it won't start. It'll die because it thinks the timing is broken or whatever the case may be. So he's like, oh, well, maybe that's getting hot. So he wires up his name's Cole, this super genius. And he wires up his washer fluid reservoir that when he pulls the pump on the stock, he has the hose pointed at the sensor and it cools the sensor off. So as he's driving, he just cools the sensor off as he goes. And he just keeps on going.
That's
and
awesome.
That's going to war, baby.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to war with your car and winning, man.
100%.
You won the battle and the war.
And I think like every, like at least man has this innate urge to prove competency and to like you say, go to war, like have a challenge against some insurmountable obstacle. And that manifests in a bunch of different ways, but getting in over your head is kind of the barrier to entry to like doing something cool, you know? Like
What
if you're
that manifest for you now?
Work and raising kids, but mostly work. So I think that for me, like we definitely get into adventures and I'd love to get into more adventures, but work is such a pressing thing running this company and kind of solving the problems that we have to solve a lot of times by choice. You know, we choose to do things the hard way because it's important, you know, in the same way that like you could go buy a modern WRX and do your trip and probably stop off at the dealer every time you have a problem, but that's not why you're doing it. Right.
Yeah. You guys have AC at the shop. You could always turn the AC off and just,
just suffer, you know, like real suffering.
You must miss it then, man.
I think that's called a sweatshop.
We've had some. That's true. That's true. We don't operate those here. It's one of the reasons why we do it here, right? So we don't have to have that. We've talked about doing an adventure. I mean, clearly you miss it.
Oh yeah,
you're you've for a couple of years been trying to drag me into driving around the snow.
Yeah, no, like there's definitely a wanderlust that's peaking right now, and I had a recent trip to mainland China and Hong Kong that kind of scratched that itch a little bit. That was awesome, but it was mostly as a tourist and as someone that was there to learn. But the drive to ship a truck to like Morocco or Mongolia and go cross the steppe is real right now, and it's one of those challenges right now is getting I've got 2 little boys. I got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I've got a company that I actually just recently bought out my business partner in January. So just getting all these ducks in a row in order to get the ability to go back and do that. And also a huge part of our product is designed around that use case of inspiring people to go take on these challenges and overcome these risks. And I think that in the modern automotive and off-road industry, a lot of what we're seeing is pushing towards how to posture yourself on social media, not actually going out and like fundamentally having an adventure. And I think that's what Overcrest Rally really stands for, is like, go and do it. Don't just talk about having a modern Cayman GT, whatever. Tells you how much I know about modern Porsches that I probably don't even have the
GT whatever.
Yeah. I don't have the nomenclature for
forever it. To be known as the GT whatever.
Yeah. But it's like, who cares? You know, it's like, what are you actually going out to accomplish? And what are you doing with the thing that you bought, as opposed to what does it look like you have access to, or who are you trying to become by buying this physical manifestation avatar to go to a car show and drink coffee and talk smack about somebody else's thing? It's like, hey, no, I'm going to go ship my truck to Mongolia and see what happens. Go F around and find out.
So honestly, the resto mod thing is out of control. It seems like if I was going to say what the resto mod is, it would be like a bunch of women that have bought expensive purses and they all show up together to get coffee and they go, check out this purse I've got. And they put it over their shoulder and they go like this and they go like this. And then that's it. That's all that's ever done with it. And then it goes back home and it goes in the closet. And then no one ever sees it again till all the girls get together again. And then they go out to coffee and they got a purse and they show it to them. And I don't see any. Most of these guys now. Most of these cars are extremely capable.
It's kind of worse than that though, because
how's it worse?
it's if all the purses were posturing as if that person wearing it was suffering without actually suffering. Because like you drive like a 1965 F100 and it's not like elegant and there's no power steering. You don't have a Coyote motor and merging onto the i5 is hard.
Yeah.
But like to get a resto mod, it's like, I'm going to bypass all the struggle. Like I'm going to have working air conditioning. I'm going to have a polyurea coating under the vehicle so I don't like my feet don't get hot while I'm driving or all these other nice to have things. And then you show up.
I didn't even know that existed.
And then you show up at a car meet as if you're the guy, you know, that like does the thing, except you're just pretending that you are. So it's in a lot of ways, it's actually stolen valor, Chris.
Ooh, wow, savage. I can't say I disagree. What do you think of my Trooper? I mean, I'd rip that crappy 2.64 cylinder out of there that was tired. My air conditioning used to work. It doesn't work anymore. So maybe that's 1 point for me. But what do you think of like upgrading the engine and everything that I did there?
Because you put a TDI in it, right?
I did, yeah.
I mean, that is kind of a period correct modification, you know? So like if you were the guy in Enumclaw, Washington that was going to build that Trooper into becoming a wheeler, like the majority of the demographic that owns that vehicle probably is, you would pick a TDI. You know, you'd be the built not bought kind of like hardcore user. And the fact that you swapped it yourself. So I guess the big question is like, is the way to break out of the stolen valor thing? Could you break out of the category of stolen valor if you build it yourself? You know? And then
let's say you put the urea coating on the bottom of the car yourself and you put the Coyote motor in your F100 yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really just comes down to how you use it.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to, is how you use the tool.
Yeah, if you use it as
if you use the tool for its intended purpose, especially if you've improved upon it and you can use it for more than its intended purpose and you're able to do that, at least you're using the tool.
And if you like daily drive it, you know, like if you built it to become like capable of being daily driven, so that's what you do with it, that's kind of rad. Like if you had like a $300,000 like Icon Bronco that was just kind of hammered because you use it all the time, that's pretty respectable.
So what's your ideal situation? What is like your ideal truck? Like what's the
Man, I've had a lot of trucks. I think the ideal ownership daily drivable truck is probably a mid to late 90s crew cab Ford. So like 1992 to 1996.
Was that square headlights or no?
Yeah.
Was that right after?
Yep.
That's still the square.
It's the very tail end of when everybody thinks your car is from like 1982, but it's actually from like 1995, which is kind of the pinnacle of internal combustion cars.
Yeah.
In terms of like reliability and like,
that's when OBD2 just came out.
Yeah.
OBD2 just came out. Stuff was pretty reliable and still pretty simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody could work on it, even though it had a computer.
And I think the dream for me would be finding so Centurion was a company that did conversions, and they did some 4-door F-150s because that wasn't previously available because trucks used to be for work, not for carrying your kids around. So I think a 4-door Centurion F-150 with the 5.8 liter motor that came in that truck, and then kind of like some light long travel Baja treatment to it, but still keeping it a little bit sleepery. That's probably like the dream, like if you know setup.
So you're still keeping the bench seat. You're not contacting the seat company and putting the brand new seats in there and the steering wheel and the off reservoir shocks and the
shocks though. I mean,
that's kind of
you might put the shocks in. You might put the 3.0 coilovers and the cut and turn beams and the big steering and 37s, you know. But just
is it kind of the stuff that you can't see that's kind of under under the jacket,
but it's also
under
like
the jacket. No one can see what it's wearing.
Yeah, but it's like only built to make it so you can haul ass in the dirt, not built to like. I mean, keeping the bench seat's kind of the move, you know. Sliding around on dirt roads, like going into the passenger seat on some of those corners, like even if you didn't mean to.
Depending on your passenger, you can always throw them into your lap too.
Yeah, exactly.
Which can always be a good time. man, that trophy truck stuff is amazing. I would love. I see people take their Raptor and they jump it off, and then they just blow the whole thing up, right?
Mhm.
I think I saw somebody do it with a Jeep, or maybe it was a Toyota or something like that, and it ripped all the lower knuckle apart. Just pulled the ball joint right out of the thing. The whole wheel slapped out of the side,
Yep.
and it didn't even look like that serious of a hit.
Yeah.
Right?
Was that silver 3rd gen 4Runner?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
I mean, I just
you saw that one
tore the
too.
whole front end off.
Tore the whole front, and I'm like, that didn't look that serious. And I'm looking at my Trooper out there, and everything is just, all the bolts are huge.
Yep.
Everything is really overbuilt on that. And I go, well, what can I do with this? I can't do anything. It makes me want to do things that I shouldn't do.
I think like the relative usage equivalent would be like taking like an off the shelf Ford Fiesta and comparing it to like a rally car. So like you're going to just blow the struts right through the little 3-bolt hole stamped piece of sheet metal if you don't like fully cage the unibody. Yeah. So the driving a Raptor off-road versus like what a trophy truck is actually capable of is literally that level of jump, like WRC versus like traffic in Ohio.
Why is it always Ohio? Why is it always Ohio, man? God,
the cultural leader of the Midwest.
I'm not going to claim that. I don't know. I don't even know that Ohio is Midwest. Where does Midwest stop? There used to be this Volkswagen show, and it's probably still around, but they used to say Midwest born, Midwest this, and it was in Kentucky, man.
Yeah, that's not Midwest.
That's not Midwest.
Where does casserole stop? Or Jello dishes?
Casserole. Indiana probably still has casserole, right?
I bet it does. That seems like a squarely Midwest.
Yeah. Ohio? I don't know.
It might not. Yeah. You know more about this than I do.
Go to overcrestproductions.com/drivers club. You can support this show for just $5, $10, or $25 a month. Anything helps. We really appreciate it. You can get t-shirts, prints. A little bird told me that Jake is going to be coming back in the fall, which is awesome. We have a lot of exclusive content there. I know a lot of you haven't heard it. There's, I think, maybe 20 episodes that are available as exclusive Drivers Club only episodes. If you want to hear those, all kinds of history stuff, some really fun things. My interview with Akim from Bugatti, the head of design, is there. There's an interview with Adam Carolla that's there that I did. There's a bunch of good stories from Jake as well. You can go to overcrestproductions.com/drivers club and support this show. It costs $5, guys. If everybody that listens threw up $5 instead of getting one Red Bull or one coffee, you would be supporting a good thing. And like I always say, if you don't support us, find something that you love to support. It's hard being a creator out here. It's difficult. It takes a lot of work. We put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into all of this. Your support would be much appreciated. Overcrestproductions.com/drivers club.
What? No, I don't eat casserole. I grew up in Wisconsin. We had casserole, but what is casserole? Is that just noodles and meat and cheese? Is that what it is? And tuna. I think there's tuna and peas. And
it sounds like just leftovers in the fridge in a like Pyrex dish.
Yeah, just with the cellophane over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be a grandma to make casserole. If you're not a grandma, you have no qualifications whatsoever. You can't even get a journeyman certification in casserole making. You're not at least 60 years old.
So I heard it's a rigorous qualification process.
It is. Yeah. Underwriting Laboratories has got it all dialed in. So tell me about a time when everything went wrong, man. You helped build this company, and man, you are the buck stops here now. It sounds like there's got to be some challenging times in there, man. There's got to be some times where you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. I mean, I want to give a lot of credit to my co-founder, Wiley, in terms of helping me understand how much suffering was even possible when we first, and I mean that in a good way, like in like the best way possible, because when we first started, we had to like make a tent, which involves fabric, and we didn't know how to sew it at all. And my immediate inclination is, let's find someone to sew this thing for us. And he was like, we'll never learn how to make this better than if we do it ourselves. And I learned a lot about, I guess, becoming a competent user and a competent manufacturer by like really owning the manufacturing processes. And I mean, when we started, we basically kickstarted this thing off of an online forum called Tacoma World. And we basically said, hey, we're building this thing. Here's some renders. Who wants to buy one? And then we took the deposit money and we started building them kind of publicly in front of a lot of people. And we proceeded to miss our intended deadlines by like up to a year. And I remember the times when we were 4 dudes standing around a sewing machine trying to figure out how to set the tension on the thread because none of us knew how to sew, but we're taking on the challenge of sewing everything in house for all the tents, and just like the bullheaded will to learn how to do it and figuring that out, all the way to like when we were late by a year. I had customers who had taken time off of work and planned to come to Montana, and they had booked that in advance, and then we missed that deadline. So I just basically said, hey, I'll drive it to you. So I ended up buying a 2018 Tundra with like $0 down on some Toyota financial program, right? At like 0.8% financing. And then I bought a trailer and I started loading the campers onto the trailer and physically driving them to all of our customers. And I was sleeping in the car. Like I didn't have any money for hotels, barely had money for food. So I was like,
you didn't have your own tent. It sounds like you didn't even have your own tent.
Sometimes if we're in the desert, like I slept in a customer's tent, but don't tell anybody. But most of the time I slept in the cab in like the parking lot of like the Home Depot In-N-Out combo in Oxnard, and basically drove all up and down the coast and basically shaking hands and owning the fact that we were late and literally driving this thing to somebody's house, having no way to put it onto the truck. So I'd call the guy and be like, hey, can you bring 3 friends? So we'd actually have to like physically pick this camper up that weighed 350 pounds and lift it onto the truck bed with like some people I'd never met before, and then go do that 3 or 4 times a day up and down the California coast, because the majority of our sales were kind of to that region. But I mean, I drove when my wife was pregnant. We drove from Bozeman to upstate to New York to Florida and back. And it was just, we made a commitment to do a thing. So we did the thing. And I think that was probably like the gnarliest situation that we got in, was just committing to doing something and then having to follow through with it.
Was it tough on the family? I mean, was the wife like, what are we doing? What are you doing?
Is this gonna
work? I mean, obviously she probably had your back, but I mean, it's
100%. Cause she was like, I mean, the majority of those deliveries happened, like the bulk of them happened when she was pregnant with my first kid. So like with our first son. So I was gone pretty much like 7 out of the 9 months of pregnancy on the road delivering campers. And meanwhile, like not really bringing in an income because it was still like heavy startup phase. I actually think in that delivery program, I found out later that so the bank account that I was using was like a
for some reason when you said delivery program, I thought you meant your wife.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's kind of both. But the delivery program that like we called it white glove delivery at GoFast, I was not savvy enough to understand that like if I used a credit card, I could get like miles or something. So I was just using my debit card, and that debit card was set up linked to overdraft out of my dad's bank account. Dude. And like, he wasn't paying attention and I wasn't paying attention. And then like, cause I was just like, I got to deliver these things. I overdrafted like $25,000 out of his account, and he made me pay him back with 10% interest. So it was just
savage.
Like a couple of years of just like getting the thing off the ground and doing it without like outside funding, doing it without some big private equity firm behind it, like that's
I want to get to that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really important to talk about. Why was it worth it, man? Because that sounds like hell. I mean, that's like a couple of years of just no money, just scraping by, crawling around on your hands and knees with a sewing needle. Doesn't sound fun.
I mean, the pursuit of the challenge is kind of what's fun, right? Like, I think that in any like serial adventurer, I think most people would think that driving across the country in a car with no air conditioning on dirt roads with 2 inches of wheel travel on your 911 isn't like objectively fun, yet you choose to do that in your spare time. And I think that doing things that are hard to see whether or not you can actually pull it off, especially if it's something that you believe needs to happen for more of an existential reason than just purely a passion of maybe making a product, it becomes a really fun kind of mission to it's something to do with your life that I think is really meaningful. And if you have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish in the world that's bigger than just making money, I think that there's a lot of good things that come from that kind of motivation, and a lot of barriers that you're willing to break through that you might not be willing to for other things. Like, I don't want to just like go suffer for suffering's sake. Like, a lot of people camp in the wintertime. I don't like camping in the wintertime. Like, if I was going to go skiing or something, maybe, but like it gets dark at 4, dude, and it's like -20. So like, what are you going to do? Just hang out? Like,
Play checkers.
that's just like objective suffering. And is starting a business harder than that? Yes, but there's like a reason, you know?
Was there a lot of faith? Did you have like, because I'm entrepreneurial too.
Mhm.
We started a photography business. Overcrest is a totally different type of business, but there's this. Everything seems like it's working now. I feel like the gears are turning. Everything feels decent. I'm still always worried. You're
Mhm.
always worried. There's no way to not be worried. It was like when my grandma took me to the airport when it was time for me to go off to college, and I said, "Are you still gonna worry?" She's like, "I'm always gonna worry. I'm gonna worry forever." And I think if it's your company, you're always gonna worry.
Yes.
But I feel like there's this misconception that people have that when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, that you have 100% confidence that it's going to work out. And there's just this, and people don't understand that a lot of it is just faith. You have faith in what you're doing. You have faith in the people that you're working with, and you have faith in the idea. But there's no sure thing,
Yeah, there's definitely no sure thing. And I think the big thing is being willing to honor your obligations to the best of your ability. Like, if you commit to doing something, then you do it. And I think a lot of people probably don't want that kind of accountability, maybe. And it's easier just to show up and do a job. And I think in entrepreneurship, especially in early days, there's faith in believing. You have to have kind of a irrational amount of belief in the ability to pull off what most people would think is like either not worth it or impossible. And then you have to have the willingness to put in the work to do it, And I think, like with Overcrest, I'm sure the early foundational time wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to call up a tire company and get a sponsorship. It's like, I'm going to go do all this stuff speculatively at a major financial loss in order to build the thing as a prototype that I need to prove.
Yeah, proof of concept, man.
Exactly.
Proof of concept. Does this work?
Mhm.
There was a time where it's like, we had the podcast going. Let's do a rally. And so we did and I've been doing events for a long time, so it was really easy. We did it in Minnesota. But the big leap was, will this work on a scale that we really put ourselves out there? We're going to go do this in Utah. And at the time, nobody had done a rally in Utah.
Mhm.
Nobody been to Utah. A lot of guys that drive trucks and Jeeps and stuff have been to Utah.
Mhm.
But regular car dudes hadn't been to Utah. And I'd been to Utah. I drove through there on my way home from Rensport one year, and I knew it was amazing.
Yep.
And I didn't know that if I put the bait out there, people would take it. And we didn't know. So we put all this time, effort, money, creative time, logistical time, planning, routing. It's a huge amount of work. They literally have no idea how much work it takes to do it. And we had no idea. This was before anybody had ever bought a single ticket.
Yeah.
Before anybody had even, all we had was all of our skin in the game. We were filleted alive with skin in the game at that point. There was no skin left on our body from which to have it in the game.
Yeah. And I think that putting yourself out there consistently and kind of being willing to have an opinion and have a vision that you want to have accomplished, and just being willing to put in the work to build the community around it is how a business is formed, right? And I mean, it sounds like Overcrest isn't different than GoFast, where it's like, hey, we found a like-minded group of individuals that wanted to solve the same problem we were experiencing on a truck. And then you just keep showing up. And most people at some point give up. It's like, I built one prototype of something and yeah, I could do it or I can talk about it, but it never happens. But just showing up every day and having the diligence to actually follow it through. And then in business, kind of the versus like an adventure, like you obligate yourself financially to do things too, right? So like you kind of lock yourself in at some point, and I think that's where like the scariness of that endeavor comes in. Is it's not just the obligation you have to your customer, but it's also to your employees and to the team around you. And you have people building their lives and their careers, and they're having kids and buying houses based off of the actions that you instigated, you know, and it's your responsibility to become
and will instigate in the future.
And it's an opportunity to become a steward of that opportunity, as opposed to being selfish about manifesting the thing that you wanted in the first place. You know, sometimes the idea can become bigger than what you wanted originally. And now it's like, how do I shepherd this? And how do I be responsible for something that's really important, you know, and do right by the organization and do right by the idea in the first place.
So one of the things that I've always seen was, you know, you guys are really proud that you guys do stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean in practice to be built here in America and made in America?
So what does it mean in practice? I would say,
yeah, like what does it mean to you? And
mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of people see that tag, right? They say, "Oh, it's made in America." What does that mean? Like, why does that matter? You know, what does it mean that it's made here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
FCP Euro is an online retailer of OEM, genuine aftermarket and performance parts for European cars. From BMW to Porsche, Volvo, and more, their catalog is a one-stop shop with over 275,000 unique products, including expert assembled kits to make shopping simpler. We just did a brake kit on the Golf R. Jessie changed her oil just the other day, got the whole kit done. She did it all herself. Watched some DIY videos on FCP's page that they released on YouTube. Awesome to make everything easy. They're actively building out the VW, Audi, and Porsche catalogs. From current to our favorite classics, including the Mark I Scirocco Freeride car, they are working to have every part you need for all of your cars. Plus, every product they sell is backed by a lifetime replacement guarantee, even wear items like wiper blades, brake pads, and oil filters. With the opening of their distribution center in Mesa, Arizona, FCP Euro is now shipping parts from both coasts, serving most of the country in just 3 days or less with free shipping option. We at Overcrest have been working with FCP Euro for years and can vouch for them. Real people who are passionate about what they do and the cars we love, while making sure that they put you, the customer, first. Check them out today at fcpeuro.com and take advantage of free shipping on any order over $49. AC Solutions offers complete plug-and-play air conditioning conversion kits for your classic BMW, such as the E30, God's Chariot, the E28 and E24, and soon-to-be Porsche. Featuring OEM quality components with period-correct finishes and materials, their products are designed as a drop-in upgrade to your old factory system, but with performance of modern technology. Their products stem from hands-on design and development with a deep knowledge and passion for these vehicles. I know Austin sits there and just crushes all the ideas in his head and just mires them down into a focal point and brings out the best possible version of his air conditioning products. Everything is well designed. They're designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts and complete with a full warranty, quality instructions mirroring those of a factory manual. Check out all their offerings at acsolutions.co. That's acsolutions.co.
There's a big reason why Made in USA is important, and it's not patriotism. While that's like totally a great thing and very like noble and honorable, we still have to create globally competitive goods in America if we actually want to build a strong domestic manufacturing economy. And I think a lot of the things that we rally around may or may not always be that, if that makes sense. So for me, it's like, how do you use domestic manufacturing to create more value for the consumer and create a product that is competitive with anything you can make globally? And how do you take care of your employees in the process? And I think the fundamental reason for Made in USA it's not because you're like this small-minded individual that thinks like, well, if we can't make it here, then we can't survive if they like take away all of our global trade. You know what I mean? Like that's not a very good reason to like never buy anything from another country. The reason to buy Made in USA is because in order for us to be able to advance and innovate and keep developing technology, we have to understand how stuff is made in the first place. I personally don't think that it's the best use of our time to make every single item in the world in America. Like every single item that we interact with every day doesn't have to be made in America, but the ability to know that you can do it is a very different thing. So to know that you have the capability of solving that problem, should that problem arise, is a very different thing than having to solve that problem every day, right?
Yeah, I think that, it gets dangerous because protectionism is not really good for competition. Tariffs aren't great because they just basically just attacks on the people that are buying the stuff here. So I think a lot of times made in the USA does get wielded a little bit as a political weapon. It's if it's not made in USA, for example, it's immediately bad. And I think what some people don't understand too is I'm not a big fan of stuff that's made in China because a lot of it is garbage. However, I know after having parts 3D printed there and having friends that have things manufactured there, that China will make a product that is as good as the person that is telling them to make it wants it to be. Right? They can make stuff at an extremely high level. I mean, look at the iPhone for fuck's sake.
Exactly.
Right? So like they can do things at an extremely high level. So this I think there's this dangerous nobility that just because something is made in the USA, it's immediately better.
I've seen bad products.
I don't think that's all the.
I've seen bad products made from most countries. Like you can have a terrible product that's made in USA. You can have a terrible product made in China. You can have a great product made in USA. You can have a great product made in China. And a lot of times it's up to the business to determine how good the thing is. So if you have like a terrible product that's made in Asia, but it's being made by an American brand, that brand asked for that product to be made poorly. Like they're the ones that chose that.
They got it. They looked at it and they went, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Put that out there. Put that on the store.
Yep.
Put that stock number in. Buy it now. Put the ad up. I don't know. Throw like $5,000 in social media dollars. Some idiots will buy this shit.
Totally.
Make a TikTok.
And there's a reason that. So like, it's my understanding that Navy SEALs are not required to purchase Berry compliant. Basically, they have a loophole outside of Berry compliant products. What Berry compliant products are USA made, like basically internally manufactured items for our military. So a lot of like we have to buy backpacks for military, firemen, police that are made in USA under these Berry compliant rules. And there's certain divisions that we make exceptions for that need even more premium products than we're capable of making, if that makes sense. And I think that it's a misnomer to think that we know how to make everything at the level that it's being made globally currently. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole there that I don't really know. That might not be a cohesive idea.
No, I think I understand what you're saying is that things are made, like it's basically, parallel to what I was saying, whereas China will make anything as good as you want it to be.
Exactly.
And forcing protectionism to protect a company here that is making an inferior product just because it's made here doesn't make anything here better, and it doesn't help the consumer at all.
At the end of the day,
it actually harms the consumer. They're probably paying more for an inferior product rather than encouraging. I don't like tariffs. I don't like any of this stuff at all. I think it should just be global competition. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's all kinds of other factors here, which I think we can get into, that make it much more difficult for an American company to compete, even if they do have a decent product.
And there's some challenges, like you're saying, to global competition, where a government might incentivize the product to own the market, so they can give government subsidies for, say, like I've seen parts bid coming out of Asia in the automotive space from friends of mine that make stuff in the States, where they are bidding the finished goods for less than the material costs would be in the USA. And
Because it's subsidized by the Chinese government.
exactly. So tariffs can compensate for a lack of like fair play, you know? And also like
Right.
a huge part of what you got to look at is what does that supply chain leading up to where your products are made, regardless of where they're made, actually look like? And is it like I can go buy a pair of like made in USA jeans that are made in Los Angeles, and I can also go buy a pair of made in USA jeans made in Los Angeles that are made by undocumented workers at a factory making like $11 an hour working 60 hours a week in LA. And is that a more ethical supply chain that you're proud to put the American flag on than buying a pair of Levi's that are made paying prevailing wage in Mexico? And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer here, but what I am saying is the means of manufacturing are arguably equally as important as the location of where it's made. And
how is a consumer supposed to deal with that? I don't have time to research the supply chain of all the things that I buy. People just can't do it. I mean, granted, I think the answer to that is we all consume too much. We consume so much that we probably don't have the time. If we would consume a lot less, we would probably have more time to understand. Stop collecting so much things, we could understand the supply chain more. But the way things are right now, nobody has time for that.
But if we didn't consume as much, there wouldn't be as much opportunity for innovation. So it's totally a double-edged sword of if our consumption allows for our ingenuity, and it could be argued that as the human race is kind of built to continually improve and iterate and keep making and challenging ideas. And by not consuming and not creating a market for those ideas to take hold somewhere, you're going to stifle that growth. Like the computer's going to take a lot longer to develop from nothing if nobody's buying anything leading up to that, right? If you're not selling any abacuses. And
right.
I think that and what was your point earlier? Like, sorry.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is kind of a meandering conversation of what is ethical, I think.
Yeah, how's the consumer know?
Basically
and I think that I think that strong businesses and businesses that are able to solve hard problems for their customer are going to be built on taking care of I think that businesses are naturally going to even out. So if you were to take a business that was built and rooted in one portion of their business is unethical labor, or one portion of their business is taking advantage of somebody somewhere, not treating their employees well, you're not going to build the strongest possible organization. So I do think that at a certain level, if you look at like Costco versus Walmart, right? Like Costco does very little advertising, very little PR, but Costco takes really, really, really good care of their employees. And you can kind of feel that walking in the door. You know what I mean? And you can kind of feel that there's a level of care at Costco that probably doesn't exist at Walmart. And Walmart's...
Is Costco publicly traded?
I don't even know if it is. But you look at like Walmart and how they've been completely upset by Amazon, right? And there's no resiliency in Walmart because it doesn't feel like a strong organization because they don't take care of their employees. It's like, why is anybody at Walmart, like they're probably not being paid to care except for the executive leadership.
So they're both publicly traded companies. And I think that, it's tough because as a consumer, I want the best possible product.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who's got a 401k, I want that to go up too.
Yep.
So we've kind of gotten ourselves into these situations where, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how passionate you were about companies that are responsible for shareholders versus their customers and their employees, and how that impacts the products. And I'm sure you've been approached many times for whether it's VC or lending or whatever for people to get their fingers into what you're doing.
Yeah, and I don't think that having investors or being publicly traded is necessarily the death knell of a business, or but it does open you up to changing the motivation structure and the incentive structure in a company. So every company functions based off of what it's incentivized to accomplish. And when your only incentive is shareholder value, that's going to corrupt everything from taking care of employees to taking care of your customer. Because everybody's seen it, especially in automotive. You get this passion project that's amazing, that's really solving a problem for a customer. And then you get some big company that goes in and buys it. It's a conglomerate that owns a bunch of different businesses. And all they do is just hollow it out. They hollow it out. They pump sales as hard as they can. They liquidate IP. And they're basically just trying to get revenue up, trying to get costs down, bump up EBITDA, roll it into another portfolio of businesses and sell it to somebody else. Or just...
It seems irresponsible, though. It seems irresponsible to just be like, hey, how many Hoonigan license plate frames can we sell at O'Reilly Auto Parts? Let's sell as many of those as we possibly fucking can right now. Let's do it. Let's push, and then we'll shut the company down.
It is irresponsible.
Why not? Why not? I mean, come in. I'm a venture capital guy, okay? I've got $50 million. I'm going to buy this company. Let's see how good we can make this. Why isn't that the answer?
Because that's not how the venture capitalist is incentivized. So the venture capitalist, they are accountable to the return to the people that they're managing the funds for. So the only motivation that they have is to perform, and they have to perform.
Yeah, but if the company does well and grows, isn't that? Is it a turnover time? Does this stuff have to happen in a certain amount of time?
Yes.
Are they trying to show profit in?
We need to, like, those people are incentivized to beat the stock market. They're incentivized to beat the S&P. They're looking to make the largest return possible as quickly as possible. And it's either fail really quickly or grow this thing in a unhealthy manner.
Exponential way.
Exactly. Because they have so much money to place. So it's like, if we need to beat 9% in order to place the Nebraska Teachers Union pension fund, and our goal is to make as much money as humanly possible, every incentive is going to be in line with how do we make as much money as possible, not how do we build a strong, resilient 100-year corporation. And the best way to make as much money as possible is to have a few skyscrapers and then level everything that's not performing as quickly as possible. So if there's no chance it's going to work, better to have it fail fast than to have it than to have it kind of like go like this, where a lot of businesses can pull out of that. But if your goal is either this or just kill it, you're not going to even give the thing the chance. And that's
you would think that there would be this, it's almost like the little devil and the angel on the shoulder, right? You're a business owner and the angel over here is going, hey man, you got a really great thing going. You're making, 80 grand a year. This is great. Just keep on going, grow it little by little. You're doing a good thing. And then the devil's over here going, hey man, I got $50 million. We're going to blow this shit up. Let's go. I'll lend it to you. I only require equity in this and you can pay me back over time. And there's only this much interest rate. Let's go. Because your brain, even if it's the angel guy, you have dreams for your company. I have dreams for Overcrest of all the things Overcrest could do. And we've never borrowed money. We've never taken any money, anything like that. But it's very easy to see where the devil on the shoulder offering you the money, that guy can make your dreams come true. He literally, that's what he's telling you anyway. All the things you want to do that you can't go yet because you're hamstrung by only using the money that you bring in every month, every year, every quarter, whatever it is. If you only have that money to deal with, you're going to grow slow. Let's ramp that up. Those are rookie numbers, baby. Let's get those rookie numbers up. And it's so tempting. I mean, I've even talked to the guys about this. I've been like, guys, we can't do that because we don't have any money. If we could get a loan, then we could, or if we got some money, we could do it right now. And it's not that I want to do that, but it's just the discussions that have come up.
But you're not going to find value aligned capital. Like, that's the issue, is there's not institutional money behind helping build passion projects into strong 100-year businesses. But there are outliers to that. Like, you could find a family fund, you can find an angel investor that like believes in what you're doing and wants to help it become the thing that it needs to become. And I have friends that have been fortunate enough to get into situations like that, where they find someone with capital who is value aligned to what they want to do, and they build great stuff, like really good stuff. But that is the exception to the rule. The majority of the money that's trying to be placed is from people that have a lot of money to put somewhere that want to grow something really quickly. And that explicit goal of growth and that explicit goal of returning shareholder value is going to incentivize these things to either peak or kill. Like you're either going to make this thing fully skyrocket or you're just going to shut it down as quickly as possible so it doesn't waste any more of your time. You know, you might buy a business for $20 million and realize pretty quickly that this was annoying and we should just shut it down. All the jobs, all the infrastructure, all the passion be damned, because it's not worth my time because I have something else right now that's taken off like a rocket ship and we pumped it already all the way from 20 to 100 million in 2 years. And now I can sell it to somebody else for 200 million, you know? And I think,
imagine hanging out with these guys. Like, God, it must just be insufferable. These guys just talking about money all the time.
That's
money.
That's
how much money did you make?
That's what's so interesting is there's no peace in that. Like, I don't know how much you've spent time around people that have objectively made a lot of money or families that have been a part of a lot of money. And I don't have this research. So this is completely an anecdote. Right?
Anecdotal.
But let's say that a bad outcome for someone is having their kids use heroin, right? I think that it would not be hard to support the idea that there is an inverted bell curve where, like, let's say this bell curve is your net worth as a family, right? So I think there's probably a sweet spot in here around like $2 million. There's probably a low end of that, like where maybe it's like $250,000 and a high end of that of like $10 million. The exterior areas of those bell curve have way more likelihood of having your kids end up as heroin users on the street. And it's the extremely poor and the extremely wealthy that are actually on that spectrum, because having access to kind of unlimited capital and no real need for economic restraint doesn't result in happiness. Like buying a $50 million beach house isn't going to satiate all of your needs as a human. And I think that there's a fallacy that, like, if you make money, you're going to be happy. And all money does is it amplifies your base condition. If you're already an unhappy person, more money will make you more unhappy. If you're already a person who suffers with addiction or some sort of like vice, it's just going to give you the ability to turn that on 11. You know what I mean? So,
or if you're me, more money just makes you buy more car projects. I mean, it's just, it only amplifies.
And the question is, right? Are you happier because of it?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on the project. I feel like it's kind of like flying a plane in the Bermuda Triangle and the compass just starts going crazy and you don't know what direction you're heading. I've been around some pretty rich people, some very good, some not so good. And you just lose your tether. You just lose your tether. You lose your bearing, and you lose contrast. And there's different kinds of pain, but you don't have any grounding for which to use as a reference point for any pain that you have and any joy that you have. There's no contrast. And I feel like there's this scale of pain and joy, or pain, suffering, and joy. The maximum amount of happiness a human being can experience, and the maximum amount of suffering that someone can experience. And if you're living in a situation where there's no contrast in your life, that scale gets brought very, very, very minimally, where you're not feeling the maximum amount of suffering because you're not capable of it. You think you are, maybe you're convincing yourself that because you can't get the Prada purse, or you can't get the new hot rod singer, that your life is going to be over. But even if you get it later, you're only still like right here. You're not able to experience the highs and the lows that most normal people are able to experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the people that I've met that seem to be happiest in life, regardless of how much money they have, are people that are driven by purpose, people that have a mission. And I think that if you talk to like a wealth advisor that knows what they're doing, I think that, let's say you're someone who's young that's about to inherit a bunch of money. if you go into that without a mission, without purpose, like you're in for a world of hurt. People that I know that have really high net worths that are doing something that they see as meaningfully important, instigation of change or helping people that otherwise couldn't be helped. Like those are people that are happy, that are using their funds to do something good. But I think to kind of draw back to the bigger point here, this pursuit of money for the sake of making money is definitely a problem. And then when you take all of our consumer goods and you motivate them through that channel, it's like it creates this culture, it creates a monoculture of products too, which is a huge problem. So it's like the 1990s were probably the peak of having like 90% of jean sales being executed by 3 brands, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
and I think what we're starting to see is a move away from that, where people are just looking for something that represents their values more. And I think that there's kind of a violent reaction to this idea of I don't want to use the word publicly traded because that's not the right word, but it's these just money driven businesses. And if you go look at like the mission statement of a brand like Wheel Pros or Hoonigan, there's no soul, you know? You go look at the mission statement of a brand that you love that solves real problems, like a Patagonia, you know, like they're trying to solve a real problem in the world. You look at Wheel Pros and it's like, Chat GPT, hide the fact that we're trying to make shareholder value our mission statement. You know, like that's what that looks like. And I think that especially as discretionary spending becomes a little bit tighter in this tougher economy, people are looking to kind of vote with their dollar. And the luxury goods are a great place where we can kind of afford to pick and choose where that spending goes. I think that to your point earlier, understanding the supply chain of where your Hanes beefy tee comes from, because like you need to wear it as an undershirt to go work at Walmart to stock the shelves at night. It's like that's a whole different problem to solve. But I think the space that I get to work in is pretty much nice to have as opposed to need to have. And that's really where the consumer can afford to be informed.
So what's next for Go Fast? What are you guys up to? I know that you launched some new stuff recently.
Yeah.
And how do you continue to get better at what you guys do? Because it's already pretty damn good.
So right now, my number one goal is building a healthy, strong organization that takes care of our employees and builds the systems we need to do a better job of solving the customer's problems and delighting our customers fundamentally. And like I said earlier, there was a acquisition of my business partner. So I bought out my partner in January and really just kind of refocusing the brand on our core value of taking care of the customer, with the complete knowledge that unless I take care of my employees, the customers will not be taken care of. Because I can't just go in there and fix all of the problems myself. Like I need a team that believes in what we're trying to accomplish and wants to help. And in order for them to be motivated to help, they need.
How do you let go, man? How do you let go? That's always a struggle, I think, for anybody that's doing a startup or working in business or anything like that. Is how do you let go and trust your employees? How do you come to that realization? How do you make it okay and reconcile that in your mind?
I think you have to have an event that helps you get over your ego. And I think that's something that happened to me when I took a bit of a sabbatical from the brand and kind of realized, like, what am I doing with my life? And that was to kind of go like immediately very deep with this. And that was about 2 years ago. And for so long, my identity was like, I'm the GFC guy, you know, like that's kind of where my purpose was. And when your purpose is that, you're going to safeguard that externally a lot more. You're not going to become a steward of that opportunity that is tied up into your ego. And when I kind of lost that identity in it and then had a chance to kind of get back into this company in January in a way that felt like an opportunity for stewardship as opposed to an opportunity to kind of like pump up my own tires, it completely changed my fundamental core value in realizing, like, every time I do something because I want it to be done that way, is that actually what's healthiest for the business is a question that you have to ask, as opposed to how am I helping the people that are working with me to simultaneously like reach their achievement levels, reach their goals, but also how are we going to elevate this organization? Because if I'm just micromanaging everything and controlling every component of it and gatekeeping and safeguarding every single thing, like it doesn't scale, like you'll never actually break out of this little ceiling that you make for yourself. And my goal is to build an organization that can exist without me, not because I don't want to work in it, but because I need to create a robust organization that actually takes care of my team and gives them opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, well, that helps you sleep better at night too, right? It's even within, my brain, Overcrest was, I always feel like it's my identity too.
Mm-hmm.
I ascribe so much of myself to Overcrest that it's difficult for my brain to extricate itself from that. I've taken steps back from social media just because I was trying to figure out where I was actually getting my self-worth from.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like on my phone being like, oh, what the fuck is this guy saying? And my family's right here. Where your self-worth is supposed to be coming from is your family and your friends. And you find out it's from some other place because of these things that you've created in your mind.
And the really tough part about that is not only are you not taking care of the things that it is your duty to take care of directly, like family and friends, you're also building a worse organization for it. And I think there was a time at GoFast where, to be like completely candid, I did a really great job of attracting talent, but couldn't retain it because I was too unwilling to let that person do what they needed to happen or let that person fail, And I think that a huge part of letting somebody grow is letting them have wins and losses. And it's like, yeah, you definitely can keep that person from ever failing if you never let them do anything, but you also never keep them from winning if you never let them try. And that's definitely a really hard thing to do. And I do think that it fundamentally comes down to ego and the motivation of what you're trying to accomplish. Because for me, it's like I've been basically given a new life in my time at GoFast, right? Like it's like a whole new era of how we're going to accomplish this goal. And that era is a function of stewardship, not a function of like stroking my own ego.
Yeah, man, that sounds incredible. I have a couple friends that have gone there to pick up their campers, and they were so excited, dude. I cannot impress upon you enough. Coming from a third party, telling you how excited people were to come to your place and see your place. Not only just getting the thing, but being there and picking it up there. And I was like, damn. That brand is, really cultivating something really special.
Yeah, and I think that it'll only grow and become special if we build the right team with the right culture to allow it to actually grow. And you can do a lot with a cult of personality, but if that cult of personality basically goes in and like takes over and keeps everything else from growing, like you'll never have the competent CX team. You'll never have the great engineering team. And you really have to take into account all these different branches of a company that need to all be healthy to make a great organization. And only having one thing can be a recipe for success, but it's not going to be long-term success, and it's not going to be the strongest possible organization.
Yeah, I agree. So for somebody that's just starting out, kind of last question for you here
Mm-hmm.
to close it off is, what advice would you give somebody that's just starting out? If you could go back and you could talk to the original you, obviously I think we've come up with a few of the answers just talking, but if you could tell yourself one thing going back, from when you first started, what would you say?
If it was when you like first started, I think there's never been
Learn how to sew better.
Yeah, exactly. There's never been a better time to put yourself out there on the internet and do something hard that you believe in and show up every day. And the ability to attract opportunities to when you basically do something hard and consistently show up every day, the opportunities are going to come to you. And I think that the earlier you can start doing that, the better. Because I hesitate to like give like fundamental business advice because
Sure.
that's not
Everything's
necessarily
different.
the path, you know, like if I look at someone who's like, I have nothing but the utmost respect for, it's Andrew Ritter, right? And from Ritter Goods. And the fact that he just taught himself how to 3D, yeah, exactly, how to 3D model everything and just shows up and builds awesome stuff that he's passionate about. And then he does collabs with international watch brands and BMW race car drivers from all over the world and F1 teams that just
Yep.
come from putting that on social, you know? And it's like, not everybody's going to have that level of success that quickly, but I don't think Andrew's success was that quick because he's done that in his life in a bunch of different
Oh,
ways, right? For a long time.
yeah. That's a long journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And
it's a seriously long journey.
And I think it's kind of that whole trope of when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, when's the next plus time to plant a tree is today. The earlier you can start doing something that you're passionate about, that you believe in, that shows the world that you're a consistent person that believes in something, the better. You know, and I think that you're going to find like-minded individuals. You're going to make friendships out of it. You're going to find opportunities out of it. But I do think that putting yourself out there is probably the number one obstacle that people just don't do. Or if they do put themselves out there, they don't do it with consistency. And if you look at like, how many people do you know that have like started a YouTube channel, made 2 videos and then just gave up? You know, it's, yeah, same actually.
I just ran out of time, dude.
Dude.
It takes too much time.
100%.
It's a huge investment.
But it's
Yeah.
like the people that just keep showing up are the people that make it.
Yep.
So
I mean, yeah, just it's a lot of grinding. You know, it's like there's 2 things that usually people ask me about. They ask me about starting a podcast and writing. And it used to be a lot of like, how do you write? How do you get published? How do you blah, 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 blah. I always get writer's block. How do you overcome writer's block? Writer's block is something that should never happen to anybody. It is the easiest thing to overcome. But the answer is so stupid. You just have to write.
yeah,
You just have to do it.
exactly.
Even if it sucks,
Mm-hmm.
the only person that's looking at it is you.
Totally.
So don't be hard on yourself. Just write it. And it's almost just like you get out of the groove. Like if you're it's 1850 and you're driving a carriage and your carriage gets out of the groove a little bit, and you just got to get back in the groove, and then you'll start going again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard outside the groove when you stop writing or you go away from it or whatever. But if you just sit down and you start putting the words together, it'll happen. I promise. I swear.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of truth in that to other things that we do, even when it comes to working on car projects. You know, there was times where I haven't worked on anything in like weeks, and shit needs to get done and it hasn't gotten done.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer it takes for me to get back to it, the harder it is.
Absolutely.
But if I come out here and I'm just like, and it's just a little project, you just turn a couple bolts, maybe you just clean up a little bit, clean off the toolbox, put a few things away. Before you know it, you're dirty as hell, you're on the ground, your pants are destroyed, you got holes in your shirt from welding, and you're back in the groove again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so stupid how simple it is. Just grind it out, just do it, and go ahead.
Yeah, and
go forward.
It sounds like a motivational poster, but it's such a good
It's
like
so lame.
It's such a good reminder. It's like we always underestimate what we can do, or we always overestimate what we can do in a day, and we completely underestimate what we can do in a year. But in that year requires showing up. And I think that consistency, and then also like finding something that you believe in to go do. And I think a lot of people have that, but then it kind of gets beaten out of them, or they don't want to pursue it because they're embarrassed because they're not good enough. And it's like, if you want to become a car photographer and you don't take pictures of cars, like that's not going to work out. If you want to become a writer and you don't write, that's not going to work out. And it's just like, do it if you actually believe it, you know? And I think that
it's what's the guy? Just do it.
Shia LaBeouf.
Like, what was his face? Where you Shia LaBeouf? Just
totally
do it.
exactly.
Which seems like it was such a meme back then, but now it seems so real. Just do it. Just do it. Graeme, thanks so much for hanging out with me, man.
Dude, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming to chat on the podcast. We'll have to drive together someday, somehow.
100%.
I want to do slow Baja.
Yeah.
I really want to do slow Baja real bad.
Is it like driving
dude,
operation?
It's running.
Man.
I drive it every day.
Yeah, my Porsche
day.
is
I
not
drive
quite
it every
there
day.
yet, so we should drive trucks.
Yeah. We'll figure something out, man. You take care of yourself.
Awesome. Same goes, man. Talk soon.
Okay, take care.
Yeah.